Most people buy altcoins for exactly two reasons. Either because someone on Twitter or YouTube says that this coin is going to explode, or because the chart is currently rising extremely strongly. The problem is, 99% of investors don't even look at the project behind it. However, I always analyze altcoins based on my 20 key metrics, together with a clear percentage score at the end. And today we're going to take a look at this exact analysis model step by step. If you understand these 20 key metrics, you'll be able to understand my channel and my analyses much better. Hi, I'm Marius from 10X Invest, and today we're going to take a look at my 10X altcoin analysis models with the 20 key metrics. So first, just relax and grab yourself a coffee, leave a like for me, and then we'll get started right away. But before we begin, let's quickly cover the basics. An altcoin is basically any cryptocurrency that isn't Bitcoin. Most altcoins were developed to solve specific problems in the end. For example, faster transactions, smart contracts, decentralized financial systems, also known as DeFi, or even new blockchain applications and infrastructures. Many projects start with their own token launch or an ICO, and then continue to develop the blockchain and build the ecosystem and applications on top of it. But that's exactly where the problem lies. By now, the market consists of millions of altcoins, which is why you need a clear analysis framework here. That's exactly why I use my model with the 20 key metrics, to even understand which altcoin is fundamentally strong at all. And now we'll take a look at exactly how that works. The first point is market capitalization. The first key metric is ultimately the one that is really extremely important. It shows how highly an altcoin is currently valued. Here, we usually distinguish between three categories: low cap, mid cap, and high cap. Low cap projects often have greater growth potential, but of course also come with significantly higher risk. The second key metric is the circulating supply. Here I analyze how many tokens are actually already in circulation. If less than 30% of the tokens are in circulation, this can later lead to significant dilution. The higher the circulating supply, the more stable the token economy usually is. As the third point, I analyze the roadmap. The roadmap of an altcoin shows which goals the project actually wants to achieve. Important questions here include: how detailed is the roadmap actually? And what are the milestones and how realistic are they? But also, are they even being met by the company? A clear roadmap massively increases trust in a project. Key metric 4. The team is one of the most important factors for an altcoin. Here I analyze what is their experience in the blockchain sector. How did they perform in previous projects? But also, what is their technical expertise? A strong team, of course, also increases the likelihood that the project will be successful in the long term. Key metric 5, the narrative. Narratives are extremely important in the crypto market. Examples include, of course, artificial intelligence, but also DeFi, meaning decentralized finance, as well as gaming, layer 2, and RWAs, that is, real-world assets. If a project has a very strong narrative, it can massively increase demand for it. Then I look at the problem-solving aspect, key metric 6. Here I ask myself an important question: what problem does the altcoin actually solve? Is the solution really necessary, or could the same problem be solved more simply? Projects with a clear problem-solving approach often have greater and better chances of adoption. Key metric 7, sustainability and energy efficiency. Here I analyze the energy consumption. What is the consensus mechanism? What is the actual ecological footprint, right? Proof of stake, for example. Here, blockchains are of course significantly more efficient than old systems using proof of work. Key metric 8, the investors and the capital. Here I look at which investors are actually involved. For example, larger venture capital firms. Well-known investors often increase a project's credibility. Key metric 9, that's where I conduct a competitor analysis. No project exists in a vacuum. That's why I always end up analyzing the competitors as well, you know? Who are actually the direct competitors, and is the project technologically better than the competition? Then for key metric 10, I look at the marketing. Many projects ultimately don't fail because of the technology, but rather because of the marketing. And here I also analyze what is their social media presence actually like. How strong are the partnerships? But what about the branding? For key metric 11, I look at the idea. An important but simple point: if a project is simply too complex for anyone to understand, then adoption will be difficult. The best projects are usually those that have a clear concept and are easy to understand. Key metric 12, the long-term vision. Here it's about the long-term strategy. In the end, does the project have a clear vision for the next 5 to 10 years, or is it just a short-term trend? Then key metric 13, deflationary and max supply. Here I analyze the tokenomics. So, is there a maximum token supply or is the coin ultimately inflationary? Of course, a limited supply can support the long-term price. Key metric 14, FDV ratio. FDV stands for fully diluted valuation, which is effectively the market value if, theoretically, all tokens were in circulation. If the FDV is extremely high in relation to the current market capitalization, that can be an absolute warning signal. Key metric 15, the volume compared to the market cap. Here I compare the trading volume with the market capitalization. In other words, I use a specific formula here, of course, volume divided by market cap. A higher value indicates that the market is trading quite actively and that there is, of course, interest. Key metric 16, token distribution and the vesting period. Here I analyze how fairly the token was originally distributed and whether ultimately large amounts of tokens entered the market later due to vesting, that is lockup periods. 17, the top coin holders. If just a few wallets hold a very large share, this can massively increase the risk of manipulation. The better the distribution, the more stable the project usually is. Key metric 18, utility. An altcoin needs a clear utility, for example, gas fees, staking, governance, that is voting rights, or access to platforms. Without real utility, there won't be any long-term demand. Key metric 19, the community. The community is extremely important in the crypto market. Here I analyze the community. How are they active on X, Discord, Telegram, on Reddit, but of course also, how active are they really? A strong community can massively accelerate and influence the growth of a project. Then, key metric 20, upcoming events. In the end, I always take a look at the upcoming events. For example, is there a mainnet launch? Are there any new partnerships? Are there any new product releases? Such events can trigger strong short-term price movements. Now let's move on to the score calculation. Now comes actually the most important part, calculating my altcoin score. Each key metric gets a score from 0 to 10. This score is then multiplied by the weighting of the metric. Because of course each metric is weighted differently depending on its importance. For example, market capitalization has a weighting of 8%. If a coin receives a rating of 7 here, then that would be 7 times 8%, which equals 0.56. And I do this for all of my 20 metrics. Then all the values are added together. The maximum score is 1000 points, and in the end this results in the overall score as a percentage, so it's extremely easy for you to understand. Let's take a small example. 820 points would be 82%. The higher the score, the higher the altcoin is valued from a fundamental point of view. Price scenarios. Based on the score, I then calculate possible price scenarios up to 2030. Here I primarily analyze the market position of the project. I assume that the entire crypto market can grow in the long term. If the market reaches, for example, $100 trillion, an altcoin can naturally reach different price levels depending on its market share. This ultimately results in 4 scenarios. First, the bear case, then the more normal case, the extremely optimistic case, or Vision 2030, the 2030 scenario. If the entire crypto market, for example, reaches $40 trillion in the long term and adoption advances massively, then of course an altcoin can also achieve an extremely high market share if it is fundamentally well positioned. Most investors actually buy altcoins purely out of emotion, FOMO, FUD. But successful investors analyze projects systematically, and that's exactly why I use my model with the 20 key metrics, the scoring system, and the price analysis. And in my videos, I break it down for you in a simple way. This way, I can objectively compare and assess projects with each other. If you want to jump straight into one of my analyses, I'll link you to an exciting analysis right here. It even surprised me, by the way, but here you can see the 20 key metrics in action. Have fun with it. Thanks for watching and see you soon.